Started. Okay, so let's record. Yes. Okay, so good evening, everybody, again. Good evening,
Yes.
everybody.
Good evening, Miss.
Good evening.
We now have
Good evening, Miss.
21 persons here, so let's get started. Before the rest of you join, when just a couple of persons were here, I asked if there were any questions based on what we've been doing so far. And those that were here early on said no, but a lot of you have joined since that. So I'll ask the question again. Are there any things right now that you don't think you are understanding, whether from the last class or from just before that? Is there anything in particular that someone wants to discuss some more or needs a better explanation or an expanded explanation, etc.? Am I talking to myself?
And email here, Miss. I am good so far. You have been, I've understood basically the whole process of performance management and system. So I'm good up to this point.
Okay, is there anybody else? Because if I hear no response, I'm going to assume then that everybody's okay. All right, well, let's get the ball rolling. So we're on now to what I would call our 9th unit or module. Okay, we have 11 modules altogether. This is how I've grouped your content into modules. So we have 11. So we are at number 9, so we are progressing well. And this module should be very interesting to you all because regardless of whether you are in HR or not, as long as you are in a supervisory role or aspiring to be in a supervisory role, you should find this information very, very interesting because it has to do with being a coach. How do you coach others as far as performance is concerned? But most of the skills we're going to talk about are complementary skills to the whole matter of being a coach. So even if you had a small football team, some of these skills are applicable to that environment as well. So let us try and enjoy it this evening and let us try and have some fun maybe with it. Maybe some of you will have some experiences that you'll share with us or have some other little stories. So let us have some fun with this module this evening as we understand what happens in coaching. Some of you may have had some negative experiences. Don't be afraid to share them. Some of you may have had some very positive ones or curious as to why it doesn't exist or whatever. So I expect that you will share this evening. Okay, I'm appealing to you to share because I am concerned with, the fact that you all are not participating. I know it's hard. I know online sometimes it's hard to stay focused, but try. So we're at the module that's called performance management skills. And we're going to take a look at what that means. Okay. And basically, for the context of what we're studying is performance management, putting coaching in that context. But as I said, a lot of the skills are transferable skills. So what this is telling you is that if you are going to be really engaged in performance management, you need several skills in order to be a good manager or a good supervisor. And we use the term supervisory management because anybody who is managing others is really engaged in supervisory management. So if you are to be a good supervisor, you have to take an interest in those that have been put in your care. And I want to stress again that it's good to remember that nobody works for you. People work with you. Anytime you are going to be a supervisor and you are going to believe that somebody works for you, Those days are gone. That is what we used to call in our old Jamaican time, Bakramasa. And we don't live in a Bakramasa environment anymore. Okay, the days of slavery are gone. So please, if you have been entrusted with persons in your unit, your department, whether it be one or two or three, remember, nobody works for you. They work along with you. And the other thing to remember is that you cannot be successful. You cannot be successful as a supervisory person if your team is not a successful team. You are not the organization. All of you, men and women, make up what we call the corporation, make up the organization. So this is why it is important that you take on the role of coach. But in order to do that, you need some skills, okay? In order to be a good manager, there are certain skills that you must have. So this evening, we're going to be sort of discussing what is really the framework for coaching, and to understand and define when we say coaching what we are saying, because it doesn't mean that if you're a coach that you take over somebody's life. That's not coaching. So we're going to discuss the process and understand that there are also some constraints. So it doesn't matter whether you on the football field as a football coach, or you're the tennis coach, or whatever other swimming coach or whatever, you don't take over somebody's life. So let us first of all define what is coaching. And as Agwini says, okay, who is the author of your core text, coaching is a collaborative and ongoing process in which a manager interacts with his or her employees and takes an active role and interest in their performance. And it involves four definite actions. The first one is directing the process, motivating the employees, and rewarding the employee behavior. So we're going to progress into this and learn a bit more about how coaching takes place. But before I do that, is anybody here who has benefited from coaching in their workplace? Nobody has ever been coached by their manager or their supervisor. Supervisor doesn't say, come, let's sit down and talk about this, okay? This is how you're going to do this or that, and let's see how you do with it. Let's review it each week, etc. None of that has happened for any of you.
Yes, miss.
And I saw your lit up, Anne. Were you saying something?
No,
Anne?
miss, that must have been an error. No, miss.
Okay. And who was responding a while ago? Is it Philip or Damien? Who was that?
Yes, Philip, miss. I was saying, yes, I have been coached on several occasions, miss, um, where I was guiding on the correct process to accomplish the task at the required standards. And oftentimes we're coached on either a process or the communication of the process. So coach on how to do it right and how to convey that information at all levels, at frontline staff and even in the supervisory position as well, from your mentor director, they will advise you of how to enhance your people management skill, or how to complete a task, or how to communicate better with the team and guide us along to meeting the goal, change on our mindset, basically.
Okay. Okay. And do you feel that you have benefited from it?
At the time, no, but in hindsight, definitely, because I'm seeing where um, being in a senior role now, I am speaking to persons along the same line, in the same vein of how to complete something. At the level where I was initially, I thought it was just somewhat of a reprimand. I'm not certain if we're going to go into coaching styles and techniques, which I was subsequently privy to. But at the time, you think you're doing the right thing, and then you say, okay, fine. If you say so, you just go along with it. in hindsight, I realized that, subconsciously, I actually did benefit and have transformed and evolved my way of thinking, doing things. And like I said earlier, coaching persons using the same techniques and basically sharing the same information.
Okay. So there's some principles that we need to observe. But before we get to that, let us also understand when we say that you're a coach, who is a coach? Okay. So the first thing we need to understand is that in the context of the workplace, a coach is usually a peer or a manager who works with an employee to motivate him or her and to help him or her develop skills and provide reinforcement and feedback. Now, it's very, very important when a coach is going to be chosen that that person is a role model. Okay? You can't take up somebody, for instance, who has a poor performance record as a supervisor and tell them that they are going to be coaching a whole group, whatever. So it starts with you, the manager. It starts with you, the manager, the supervisor. If you are not a role model, you're really not in a position to coach anybody. So you have to look at yourself first. Okay, you have to look at yourself first and ensure that you have the skills that are going to be needed, that you're a good leader, you have good leadership skills, you can communicate well, that you can look at things objectively, etc. Now, there are other coaches too, as in the case where you may select another employee to act as a coach for that person. Take, for instance, you have a new employee coming on board, and as part of their socialization, their orientation, you're going to do what we call side-by-siding, okay? Meaning you're going to have this person help this person for maybe a week or two to get integrated into their job, especially if you've just had somebody, say for instance, like a new graduate coming out of UE who has had no work experience. You need to choose somebody carefully. You can't just pick up any employee and say, listen, I'm going to want you to provide some support to this new person coming into the department or coming into this position, etc. So you have to choose very carefully who can coach who, okay? So a coach can be a peer, as it says here, which is what I just explained, or a manager in the case of the supervisor. But that person has to be a very, I would say, upbeat person, because one of the worst things that can happen to somebody that you place in coaching is that they become demotivated by the person who is acting as the coach. So anybody you're going to choose has to be able to motivate that person. They must be knowledgeable about what it is they're coaching about, and they must be able to provide reinforcement. So somebody didn't have a good day, who's under your charge, somebody didn't have a good day, something didn't go right, maybe the report wasn't done properly, but you need to provide reinforcement. It's not a matter of beating somebody over the head. So you need to provide reinforcement and you need to provide feedback. And as I said, one of the easiest ways to remember this whole thing of coaching is if you have been at school and you have played a sport and you've had a coach. There are times when a coach will gather all of you together and they'll talk about it, or he will single you out and say, hold on, that's not the kick. That's not the way you approach it. You need to approach the ball from this angle or that angle, or you need to increase your speed. So come on, we're going to work on speed development, etc., etc. Okay, so you have to make up your mind. And the thing about this responsibility, if you have decided to take a position of leadership, then automatically you must be a coach. And that is why I say not everybody is meant for a supervisory position. Not everybody is meant for a leadership position, because with the job comes a lot of things that you're supposed to do and do them well. And coaching is one of them. So it's all not just about getting promoted and wearing the nice badge on your shoulder, you know, or the nice pin that says supervisor. It's about having the skills that goes along with taking on that role. And being a coach is one of them. So the roles that the coach can play can also be placed in three categories. In that you can have one-on-one coaching where, as I was saying before, take for instance a brand new employee coming in and you select a good peer in the department to do what we call the side-by-siding. You know, this is guiding the person along for a couple of weeks. How long you decide to have this person work with the other person is up to you, the manager, in terms of what you think needs to be done. And also getting feedback from the person who is the coach as to how this employee is, you know, like integrating or what is happening. So you can have a one-on-one, or you can provide the guidance so that the person can be self-directed in his or her learning. Meaning you said to them, okay, here are the manuals for this particular project. I need you to sit down and go through them properly and come back to me with questions you may have about it. Tell me what are some of your observations, where you think there may be a challenge, but you need to learn that this is the process for the project, etc., etc. So you put the employee into some self-directed learning, okay? And also, it may involve providing other resources. And you notice they mention mentors. Now, a lot of people ask, what is the difference between a coach and a mentor? And a mentor sometimes is somebody who may not be necessarily involved in your day-to-day experiences, but is available to you so that they can help you to be motivated. They can see you along. You might be pondering over something. You can go and ask this person a question, etc. So there's a bit of a difference between the coach and the mentor, okay? We may point you in other resources such as courses, or we may do some job rotation, okay? And the person who is the coach monitors all of these things. So if you were assigned a mentor, it would be the coach's job to ensure that this mentor is working well, that mentor relationship is going okay, and you know, all things are working properly, okay? You were sent on a course, it's the coach's job to see, you know, maybe ask you for a report at the end of the course in terms of what was your experience with the course, what you thought you learned, all that sort of stuff. And then of course there are the job rotations where you may be sent over to another part of your unit for a week or two to see how something functions over there, you know, to help broaden your experience, etc., etc. Okay, so coaching can occur in different forms, okay? There's a lot of benefits, a tremendous amount of benefits for you as a supervisor or a manager when you take on the role of coach, okay? It can work very well for you. It can work very well for the employee, because if you are a good coach, you are going to be perceived by your staff as being a good leader. And you'll hear comments like, my manager likes to see me develop. My supervisor is going to ensure that I develop. And you become known within your department as somebody who has the welfare of all of the department at heart, as we would say in common language. So your reputation when you are a good coach is usually a positive one, okay? When employees are properly coached within a department, you can see the difference in the productivity of the department. Departments that get feedback, that the manager or supervisor is a good coach or has put a coaching experience in place by using a peer to, help a junior one ahead and stuff, you can see the difference in the productivity levels in the department. Competency improves and persons understand what is expected of them. So again, it is another aspect of performance management that becomes very, very important. The other benefit is that you find that person's initiative also improved. They're more eager to take on activities, more eager to help, because basically they have developed that confidence because the coach is giving them feedback, the coach is encouraging them, motivating them, etc. So when you get to the appraisal stage, and this is going back to the times when we have spoken about the importance of feedback, this falls right back into that whole feedback process, because if you are coaching somebody or you are ensuring that coaching is there and there's mentorship within your area, when you sit down to do the performance appraisal, there are no surprises between you and the appraisee. So there are no surprises between the rater and the employee who is the appraisee, because we've been giving feedback. So there's less defensiveness. And we should always aim to have less defensiveness at the appraisal time, because defensiveness can get very serious. I mean, as I think I told you in one of the our meetings, that people will get physical. They lose control and they will get physical. The employee will get physical with you, especially if it is a end of year appraisal. I think I already went through that with you, telling you that people have a lot of expectations at the end of a year in terms of what they're going to do with the incentive money or the bonus or whatever. People also get very upset when they think they could be promoted and the promotion is not happening, and it's all of a sudden a surprise. I'm hearing that I didn't do well and I didn't do this all year and whatever. So again, if coaching is in place, it avoids some of that, okay? When coaching is in place too, persons are encouraged to be creative, and you find that innovation and creativity also improves, okay? People become much more confident. They're not afraid to ask questions, not afraid to speak out. And in cases of teams, you can see that the team becomes much more cohesive. They really operate as a team. They get along, and you don't hear that this one is not pulling the weight and that one is not pulling the weight, etc. So it's also important, if you have teams within your area, that you ensure that this coaching and feedback aspect of performance management is in place. Any questions or comments from anybody as we move on? Any questions, any comments?
No, miss.
Okay, the
Miss,
rest
I
of
have a
us.
question.
Okay,
How do you see
who is this? Tell me.
Nikisha?
Hi, Nikisha.
How do you see coaching going on in this online modality?
How, when you say how do I see coaching going on, what do you mean?
Like example for my department, we're all working from home. So I'm just imagining how coaching really takes place.
Well, your manager should be able to get online with you or even on the phone and say, hi, Nikisha, I know you're working on the Zero project. How is it going? You're having any difficulties? You know, and encourage a conversation, or set up meetings. Okay, what is called a management meeting should not go away because you're now online. Like I am acting as a HR consultant to try to put a whole department. As a matter of fact, I have 2 projects like that where I'm working to try and put the whole HR department back on good footing. Okay. And one of the first things I did was to set up a weekly meeting with the 2 senior persons in the department where I require a report as to what has happened during the week. Where are you having some difficulties? What would you like to talk about, etc., etc. And I provide feedback, as well as they know that they're free to call me at other times to get feedback. But I ensure that even if they don't call me each week, I have a Thursday afternoon meeting at 3:30 every Thursday with one of them, so that I can give feedback and I can also see what is happening and see if their resources are in place and encourage them, because sometimes the week is a very challenging week, etc. So as far as working from home now, your supervisor or manager should set up that relationship with you where they're getting feedback and they're able to provide some reinforcement to you, and look at what difficulties you are having. You might say, for instance, you might be having difficulty with Excel. You have to do a lot of Excel reports now, and you're having difficulty, you're working from home and you're having difficulty with Excels. That person should be talking to you and try to say, okay, Nikisha, we're going to do something about improving those Excel skills. Either point you to a resource or said, okay, let's do a one-on-one class one afternoon, yourself and myself, and let's get through what we have to get through to improve those Excel skills.
Okay, my friend.
Somebody else had a hand up a while ago. Was it Shauna?
Yes, it is, Miss. A question. I agree to the point you made a while ago about leaders ought to be coaches, right? You're supposed to be, as you aspire to leadership, then you should evolve in that role of being a coach. What I, having observed in my work life, through the recruitment, it's back up again. All right, what I'm seeing with the recruitment,
go ahead.
what I'm seeing in the recruitment and selection process, this component or this, I'm calling it this skill set, is not, there's not much emphasis to it, nor even in art. I work in a field that has a lot of technical personnel, right? There's emphasis on their technical expertise, but not so much on the coaching. And I've always believed that as a leader, a measure of your performance ought to be how you develop your staff. But there's no emphasis on it. It's more on achieving targets, and that doesn't, I've never seen it as a target. How would we change that dynamic where as a leader, you are encouraged to be coached, be a coach? And the second part I want to ask you as well, Miss, how do you address someone who says, I've heard managers say, I'm not the teaching type. That's not for me. That's training and development.
That's poor leadership. That's poor leadership, and that's somebody being very, very misinformed about what the role of leadership is. When you are going to measure, say, for instance, a factor called leadership in performance management, you need to, as I have told you before, clearly define what are the expectations, what are the behaviors that are expected in that leadership category. And one of the things should be the ability to give feedback, the ability to provide reinforcement and give feedback to employees within the unit, etc. And that is where the whole matter of coaching comes in, because coaching involves giving somebody feedback, providing the reinforcement, as I said before, and helping that person to develop.
In a constructive way too, Miss.
In a constructive way. But when a manager is going to say, then I am not the teaching type, then it begs the question, so why did you take this position?
And as I'm telling you, with the recruitment and selection, it's normally persons who are experts in these areas, so like telecommunication, energy, and so on. So they're experts in this field. So those are normally the boxes that are up front and they're checking to make sure this person is able to do. But they come and they manage a team of persons who aspire and they want to grow and so on, you know, and looking for guidance professionally, and it's just absent. And then when
So basically what is happening, and this crosses over to your staffing course, is that when somebody has this in their presentation to do, when you are choosing persons, you have to look at whether you're choosing a person to job fit or a person to organization fit, or you want the balance of person to job and organization fit. Because what we find is that when you hire for just person to job, what exactly you just described is happening. You're hiring for the technical skills and you're basically disregarding the culture of the organization.
exactly.
Okay, or what is required. And if you want to see an example of that, is persons who are placed in what we call a staff role. They don't have anybody reporting to them. They are the staff member responsible for a particular task, especially if it's a project related organization,
Mhm.
but nobody reports to them directly. They might be assigned to the president and they churn out the president's reports and that sort of thing, but they have very little interaction with the rest of the staff. And you see it playing out when you do things like you go into the cafeteria at lunchtime.
And they're sitting by
That
themselves.
person never sits with anybody.
They're by themselves. That's true.
They're by themselves. They find that corner table over by the window and they're there, and they might take a book with them and they're eating and reading their book. And when they finish, they go and they empty their tray and they walk out of the cafeteria, you know, or they pick up their lunch and carry it back to their desk and that sort of stuff. So it's very, very important when you are hiring that you look at what it is, what are the behaviors the organization has. And you've heard me say that it's very, very important in the performance system to determine what are the behaviors, what are the competencies that this organization wants. So if I want to have a healthy culture where my employees are going to grow and develop and whatever, then I need to be hiring for good leadership skills. And when you define leadership skills, this is one of the activities that should be in the definition. Somebody who is able to motivate their team, who is able to develop the skills, you know, provide reinforcement feedback. You could almost take up that first paragraph here on this slide and put it into that document that you're developing, where you're going to explain the different levels of performance for leadership. Is a good coach, you could actually just use this to write that descriptor. So if you looked at on a scenario of from 1 to 5, 1, I would start off by saying does not perform the role of coach, does very little to motivate employees or develop their skills, little or no reinforcement and feedback given. That would be unsatisfactory, one of the unsatisfactory behaviors in leadership. And then if I was to go to the far right of the continuum to outstanding, it would say consistently acts as coach. Employees are motivated, feel free to communicate with their manager. Reinforcement and feedback is provided in a consistent manner. So I could actually just lift this and use it as one of the descriptors in doing the ranking for that behavior. Very, very important. Very, very important. But yes, I have seen it play out where somebody say, yeah, I can't teach anybody anything. So don't ask me. Or you ask somebody as a peer to be a coach for another employee, a new employee coming in, and a person said to you, I can't teach anybody anything. I don't have any patience. I don't have the skills for that. And I don't have the time for it either.
That's true.
And you hear those kind of comments.
But how do you
Go ahead.
how do you shift that though? We're part of your program, or this program, and we're learning all of this, and we go back to an organization where your eyes are now open to the shortfalls.
Who is this, Shauna still?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little unfortunate. I get this question every year. And it's a little unfortunate because some of you will not be in a position to go back and change anything. What you will be in a position of is to become very aware of yourself in terms of how you even interact with others, or how you prepare yourself for your own performance appraisal. But unfortunately, like for instance, those of you that are working in public sector, you can't go back and change anything in PMAS. But what you can do is, if you are in a position and you ever have to interview, you become much, much more aware of what you should be looking for, and even some of the skills that you need. But many of you are not going to be able to go back and change the system, unfortunately. But you become much more aware, and it will help you yourself to do a much better job to improve even your personal and your interpersonal skills, and to be aware of why you're doing certain things in the job that you're carrying out. Some of you might be able to ask some questions, and you may have an opportunity to give some feedback, but I would say the majority of persons I notice are not in senior positions, and therefore when you go back, you can't really effect change overall. You can effect change in how you deliver yourself and how you deliver your work and your own productivity and stuff. But it's unfortunate because you might be going back to work for a manager like you described.
And even how you spoke just now about getting that information. For example, if you have a CTD that reports to a general manager or so on, for that general manager to know that this person has achieved this target as it relates to leadership and coaching and so on, they'd have to get some insight from the staff in which that person interacts with, right? In terms
well, it depends on how your system is set up, because remember what I told you about 360-degree systems, that if you're going to set up a 360-degree feedback, you have to ensure you have the resources and stuff inside to do it, because it can have severe repercussions. And not too often in the organizations here locally especially, are you being allowed to ask staff how their manager operates? And you have to be very careful with that. Nor should a manager be walking around to ask the peers how do their colleagues operate. Because if the system is not set up for that, then you shouldn't ask. 1 minute, please. Janet. 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for allowing me that. I just needed to let somebody go. Somebody leave for the evening. Yes. So you have to be careful, because you're not supposed to just walk around and ask people how their peers are doing and that sort of stuff. So in some cases your hands are a bit tied because you can't alter the system, and you have to be careful. You can't just get up and, as I said, walk around and start asking persons how their colleagues are going. You'll find yourself in a lot of problems.
True.
Okay, so we move on. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now we also have what is called 4 principles of successful coaching. This is very, very important. Who has done some reading? Here I go again, right? Who has done some reading on this module? Who wants to tell me why we say a good coaching relationship is essential? And what do we mean by that? Now, the more you participate, the more likely that the next class might only be a half class, If you don't participate well tonight and we don't move along, then we have 2 full classes. Okay? Just giving you a little carrot there. Nobody read about this? Okay.
Miss Doc,
Yeah.
can you try?
Yes, yes, I want you all to try. That's what I'm telling you. Try. I like the efforts.
Could it be trying to ensure that the relationship has like trust factor in it?
Yeah, who is talking? Who is talking?
Chantal Hardy.
Okay, Chantal, but oh, you okay? Because your thing didn't light up.
Like
Okay, go ahead.
and being able to can collaborate with each other throughout the period of the coaching process. Because it's really creating a bond, and if you can have a bond with that individual between the coach and, I don't want to use the word mentee, but the
Well,
person
you can say mentee
coaching.
too. Yeah, because if it's a mentors, you can say mentee. That's okay.
Yes, so you're able to can look at where the person is coming from and have a feel in terms of how you can even provide the guidance and what you can do to improve.
Good, good. That relationship is very, very important. Okay, extremely, extremely important. If there is no trust between you and the person that you're working with, the relationship can't work. So the first thing to do is to establish trust. The first thing is for that employee who is working with you, the supervisory person, or even the peer. This is why when you're going to use a peer to do this, you need to give the peer some training in terms of what are the boundaries, what are the rules of this engagement. So we usually develop a document that we would give to the peer person as to what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, how to deal with certain things. As a matter of fact, interestingly, in the graduating students this past year, one of the practicums that was done in performance management was establishing a coaching process for an organization. And the student established all the principles, actually wrote a small manual as to how coaching is to be carried out and what are the rules of the game. So when you're going to actually set up a coaching process, especially with a peer, there should be some guidelines that are given. Now, in general, for the organization should also have some guidelines for its managers and its supervisors as to how the coaching process should work. Because it's very, very important that the relationship be a good one, and that the employee understands what is to happen there. If you're not a good listener, you can't be a coach. I don't care what it is you're coaching for. One of the big skills in order to have a good coaching relationship is to have good listening skills. The employee has the right to talk about whatever is going on with them. You will never be able to help if you don't allow that to happen. So you need to be a good listener so that you can understand what is happening. And you also need to encourage not just dealing with the negative aspects of what is going on, but dealing also with the positive aspects. So one of the first things you have to do is to be able to listen and be able to explore what is going on, be able to look at where the employee's stress is at, and build that trust. So it becomes a collaborative relationship between you both. So that's very, very important. The first thing you need to do is establish that relationship. If that person is afraid of you, nothing is going to happen. If that person feels they can't trust you because every time they meet with you, you go back and you talk about it with all the other managers or supervisors, or you talk about it with another employee in the department. You're the supervisor, but you have your favorite little person in the department, and you say, boy, Susan came to my office today and boy, she come to talk about the fact say she can't understand how to do Excel, and her Excel skills are so weak. I don't know what I'm going to do with her, whatever. And that word travels like wildfire. Because if you want somebody to spread gossip, the first thing you say to them, I'm going to tell you something, but I'm telling you alone. And the moment you do that, you have encouraged that person to share that information with somebody else. That's how gossip works. Okay, that's how gossip works. Anything you tell somebody and tell them you are telling them alone, you will be prepared for the repercussions from it. So it's therefore extremely essential that if a coaching relationship is to work, that trust and confidentiality be in place. You can't go away and discuss that exercise with somebody else. The only place you should probably go with it, if you think it is something that's going to be a bit out of your depth, then you may go and have a confidential meeting with HR, because HR is supposed to be confidential. Because there might be situations where what is happening is more than you, the manager or supervisor, can handle, because you're not a psychologist nor a psychiatrist, nor are you God. So if you ever find that what the person needs or what is happening is more than you can handle, then you should go to HR, because they're supposed to be equipped now to decide, well, maybe we need some external help here, or let us take a deeper look as to what is happening. But that coaching relationship is essential. The second one is the employee is the source and director of the change. Anybody wants to guess what we mean by that? What we mean by that one? The employee is the source and director of the change.
Well,
Miss,
All right, one at a time. Who goes first?
this is an email, Miss. For me, I'm thinking the purpose of it saying the purpose of the coaching is to change the employee's behavior and also to influence the way how he or she will act in the future.
So why do we say the employee is the source then and the director of the change?
well, Miss, from what I understand,
Wait, let me let Anne
my
finish.
apologies. I thought she was through.
Anne.
Yes, Miss.
Okay, so why do we say that the employee is the source and director of the change then?
Because all right, so the coaching is basically directed to the employee, which I'm thinking is the source. And based on what he or she will learn, then they will influence, the change will thus be reflected and performed.
Okay, all right. Philip, what are you saying?
My perspective is that we achieve our goals through people. And as leaders, it's important that we provide the employee with the requisite skills, knowledge, and guidance to achieve those goals. Because as you said, alluded to earlier, people work with us, not for us. And if we're supposed to achieve our targets and objectives, it's important that we coach the employees, and a well-coached employee will contribute to the productivity of any department. And from that perspective, I think they are the source. And also the feedback is two-way as well, where you provide them with information and based on the uniqueness of their personality traits, their skills and characteristics.
Okay, anybody else wants to participate?
Shireen here.
Yes, Shireen.
The employee has within him or herself potential and resources that the coach will help the employee to unearth and recognize. So it's not as if the coach is going to instill or input something in the employee just to help them to bring it out or recognize it.
Okay. Anybody else wants to participate?
Miss, could we say as well that the employee would need to want to change it? They want to change it to make the process works, as well as it's like a deliberate effort that they demonstrate to make the change occur. Because like we said, we are responsible for effecting the change.
Who is speaking?
Chantal Hardy.
Chantal, okay, okay. Now, all of what you have said is important. And in addition, what is very, very important is for the coach to recognize, as it says here, that the employee is the person who has the information. The coach does not have the information. The employee is the person who is coming to sit in front of you with the information. So you have to understand that you have to allow that person to take ownership of what is happening. If you bring somebody in to a coaching session and you the manager, you know, or the supervisor does all the talking, you are going to learn nothing. Remember we said in item 1 that one of the skills important for a good relationship is to be able to listen. So we're telling you here again that remember, the employee is who has the information. And the reason why we also saying that the person is the director of change is I could talk to you 25 times and you don't make up your mind to change. So the employee, in order for coaching to work well, the employee has to want to change. The employee has to want to be able to change that behavior depending on what it is, okay? And the employee has to almost decide that this is the path that they want to take. So you encourage them to set their goals and to decide what direction they want to take. Oftentimes coaching fails because you pay and you go to these coaching sessions and you pay a lot of money for them and whatever, but you have come away and you have no intention of changing. Have you never seen that happen anywhere? People become fixated with what it is, and it doesn't matter what the right way is. You'll hear somebody say, me not changing nothing. So you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware that they hold the information. You can't help them to change unless they are willing to change. So a lot of times when we get into the dialogue, we have to try somehow to get a commitment out of that person that they're willing to work on this problem and, you know, make it better, or they're willing to undertake this project and make it work well, or they're committed to making the project work well, etc., etc. So the whole matter of change is very, very important. The ability of somebody to accept change. Okay, and sometimes this exists at the top as well, you know, because remember, managers, you're a manager and supervisor, you are an employee as well. And a lot of times in your head, you are not going to change. And if you are not going to change, you cannot help your employees to change. I mean, we could get into a whole big area called coping with change, which would take another whole term for us to work with what happens with change management, okay? But in a simplified way, you, the manager, has to recognize that if this employee is not willing to change, then you will have to look at what the other solutions are, because the employee is the source of the information. So when somebody comes to you with a challenge or a suggestion or whatever, you have to listen and listen well and understand, because you don't have that information. You don't have the information to make a good decision. You don't have the information to offer up a solution, etc. And then on the other hand, that person has to be willing to change. And this is why we say that the employee is also the director of change. Okay? Very, very important. Okay, so we then go on to say the employee is whole and unique. Who wants to have a stab at that? Who wants to have a stab at that?
I'll try again, Shireen here. The
Okay.
employee, what works for one?
Wait, just a minute, before you go on. Tiffany, is Tiffany here? Is Tiffany here? Tiffany? Is there somebody called Tiffany in this class?
Yes, miss.
You're all lit up. You're completely lit up all the time, and this is why sometimes I think you're waiting to answer, because you are totally lit up. Is it that you have your hand raised, Tiffany? Because you're totally you're all lit up. You're all lit up. Are you muted, Tiffany? 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 Okay, I guess she's not answering. She's completely lit up all the time, and this is why I can't tell whether she's answering or not answering. I'm sorry, who was speaking before?
Shireen.
Shireen, go ahead.
Yes, I was saying that what works for one employee may not necessarily work for the other. That is in reference to the uniqueness. And in terms of saying that an employee is whole, we have to remember that each employee comes with different situations from different backgrounds. So we have to take in the whole being and not just the person as a worker.
That's correct. Somebody has a lot of interference. Don't know who it is, but somebody sounds like that. I have a radio or a TV going, please. And that happens without hearing. Yes, we have to remember that each employee is different, okay? And when we begin to talk with the employee or handle the situation, we have to try and understand what we call the whole employee. It's not just about, sometimes it's not just about what happens at work. Sometimes we have to, you know, we're not trying to pry into somebody's privacy, but sometimes to solve the problems or to help the employee, we have to understand the life work experience. You know, what's happening. Somebody might not be performing well at work because something is happening in their personal life. I mean, you have to be diplomatic. You can't force somebody to share, but you might want to ask them if there are some other, you know, are there some other external factors that are affecting your performance? Is there something you'd like to talk about? Is there some other challenge that you're having, and you might say outside of work, that's affecting your performance? And depending on what is happening, again, you don't play the psychologist or the psychiatrist. You might have to go to HR and seek some assistance for this person. Because a lot of times people have good skills, you know, but the external pressures, and think about what is happening now. Again, I refer to COVID because COVID is so serious. You know, you may have an employee whose family just lost somebody in COVID, or who has a good friend who is in hospital with COVID, or who had a neighbor that something happened to, and that person all of a sudden is a bit unhinged, they're not focused, etc. So sometimes to act as a coach and to help to bring about some positive, you know, solutions or whatever, we might have to explore if there are other factors. We might have to explore if there are other factors that may be preventing this person from, you know, performing well, or, you know, focusing well or whatever. You might notice that somebody has like a lot of sick days, or somebody is coming to work late all the time, or somebody is not speaking up in meetings, or they're not volunteering to do anything. Somebody even looks sad. So as a coach, you have to develop the exploratory skills without being what we call intrusive. But it's very important, because if you can't get a whole picture, you can't help to bring about solutions or development. Because remember, you're not only coaching for negative performance, you know, you're coaching for development as well, which means that your coaching might be a part of somebody's career development. Okay, it might be, you might be part of the succession planning process for the organization, etc. But if you don't understand who you're dealing with, as we would say, you can't begin to bring about solutions either, or look at relevant activities or other opportunities that this person could benefit from. So you have to understand that each employee is unique. Each one brings different things to the job, okay? And each person has things that are beneficial. So you want to make the experience what we would call whole. You want to have what we would also describe as a rich experience, meaning somebody who is part of the coaching process, feels that this is of benefit, they're motivated, and therefore, they will share. So you again go on to look at trying to make the experience a good one, the relationship, try to make it meaningful, okay? Coach is the facilitator of the employee's growth. That should be an easy one. Tell me what you think about this one. What do you think about this one? What do you think about this one? If I say the coach is a facilitator, what do you think should happen here? And as I said, sometimes pair this with looking at some other types of coaching, could be the football, the cricket, the tennis, the netball, whatever. When we say the coach is a facilitator, what is the role of the coach?
Can I try, please?
Sure. Who's talking?
Okay, Nicola here.
Hi, Nicola.
My understanding would be that the coach provides feedback that the employee will know the area that they need to improve on.
Okay.
So they facilitate the growth. So the employee will have to do the work necessary to grow, but the coach now provides that space for them to make adjustments.
Yes. Any other feedback? Any other sharing? Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay.
Miss, can I try again?
Yes. Who's
Miss,
talking?
this is Anne, Miss. I'm also thinking that the coach is facilitating the process of development, and also to help create awareness for the employee to strengthen their awareness and maintain their attitudes, and also help with goal settings.
Right. So overall, the coach is supposed to be that helping hand. Okay, the coach is supposed to be that helping hand to facilitate all of these things that you spoke about, facilitate development. The coach is supposed to be able to help the employee to explore different avenues, different solutions, different opportunities. The coach is to be able to give advice. So you can't know about something and then offer up yourself as a coach, okay? Because the coach is supposed to be able to give good advice, whether it is technical or non-technical advice. And as I said, if you are a coach and you feel that you're a little bit out of your depth with something, then you go and you seek those resources that can be brought into the environment that can help to solve whatever it is, or to help that person to grow. But a coach has to be a good leader. Coach has to be able to give advice. The coach has to be able to encourage people to develop. Okay, when you give feedback, you encourage persons to develop. And basically, overall, the coach is there to encourage all of that. Okay, so the coach should be able to diagnose the performance problems, if there are performance related problems, be able to diagnose them and be able to communicate effectively, help that person develop, and know what activities that person would need, to be able to develop, and where are those resources, etc. So when you take on the role of a coach, it is not something to take lightly. And this is one of the tenets or one of the skills of good leadership, the ability to coach, okay, or to be a good mentor is one of the most important leadership skills. Very, very important. Okay. So we've talked about all of these, you know, this slide is now just reinforcing what we just spoke about. Okay. I thought I jumped ahead because I wanted you guys to participate. So basically, all of this is important in that we have two sides to it here, major functions and behaviors. So when you look at the functions, we just spoke about them, providing advice, giving advice, providing guidance, being supportive, allowing the employees to build their confidence, helping them to gain greater confidence. You might have someone that are very confident already. So the major functions in terms of what you should be doing as activities are major functions. The behaviors that you as the coach should exhibit, and we have talked a lot about some of these, is that you have to be able to identify and establish what activities will allow somebody to develop. So like I use a simple example of the Excel, learning Excel. You might decide that if this person is to write good reports, you know, and to do good spreadsheets and stuff, they really need to learn Excel. So you're taking up on yourself to either teach them or to find a resource for them to learn, send them to an Excel class, whether it be online or whatever. You have to be able to communicate effectively. If you are going to be a good leader, you need to be able to speak properly. You can't call HEAD ed. It's head, okay? And we find that a lot is needed in terms of persons being able to communicate both verbally and in writing. Okay, you can't correct somebody's report for grammar if you yourself can't write proper grammar. Okay, you can't tell somebody they didn't speak about something properly if you yourself does not speak properly. You have to be a motivator. We've talked a bit about encouraging and providing rewards. And remember, rewards, when we speak of rewards, we're not speaking about financial rewards all the time. We're speaking about praise, you know, telling somebody they did something very well. Sometimes reward comes in the form of taking on some additional activities, etc. Okay. Sometimes it is a simple thing like leading a meeting, allowing an employee, okay, you know, because something was done so well, to lead the weekly meeting this week, that sort of stuff. You have to be able to document performance, especially if you have put somebody into a formal coaching session. Now, one of the things about coaching is that if somebody has severe performance problems, one of the activities, developmental activities that can be undertaken is to put them into formal coaching, okay? And if you put them into formal coaching, you must document the coaching sessions and you must document what is happening. So you might say to somebody, as a way of improving what this is, I'm going to require that I meet with you weekly, whether it is for an hour or a half an hour or whatever. And if you have done that, if you're setting those parameters, you must document those sessions for the file, okay? Because it becomes a part of the performance appraisal process, meaning when you sit down to do the performance appraisal, you will need to refer to these developmental activities. So if, for instance, in the prior appraisal, the mid-year appraisal, you had set as a developmental activity or a remedial activity that somebody needs to, who wants to give me an example? Give me an example of something that you might have set in a mid-year appraisal to be improved. Give me an example. Somebody give me an example. Guys.
Miss Attendance.
Okay, fine. Attendance. Okay, so you might have put in there that somebody needs to improve their attendance. So you will have to decide now how you are going to document whether that improvement is taking place. So think about what are some of the activities you would do to be able to document that that is improving. What would you do? That's an easy one, you know. Think. Come, don't be afraid to share.
At the
You
time of
want,
the evaluation,
pardon me?
I was saying at the time of the evaluation, if you note what their attendance pattern is and pointing out where it has fallen short or is not in keeping with the established policy of the organization, you could speak to them about their time management, how it is that they plan their day and so on, and seek to give some feedback as they go along. Maybe you have to look without getting too much in their personal life. You may have to look at even as early as how do you wake up, how you prepare for your day at home, stuff like that, without getting too intrusive. So you have to be really keen on knowing if you're going over a line, right?
Okay.
And so on. And even on a weekly basis, without being too intrusive again, you could give timely updates, you know, and if you realize that the person is making an effort and the duration, they're normally late by maybe a half an hour, cut down to 15 minutes and so on, give praise where praise is due for effort. And it encourages the repeat behavior and the corrective actions.
Good example. Your company might have, for instance, an attendance book. So you take the attendance book and you look at what is happening, yes. And you decide, okay, you're not seeing, you know, like you're saying, you're not seeing the improvement in the first instance. Then yes, you might decide to, you know, to meet with that person to see what is happening, you know, yes, still not improving, or you're beginning to see the improvements, but not enough. Yes, you meet like you say. But what is important is that you must document these meetings so that when you get to the performance appraisal stage, you have factual information. And not only that, in having dialogue with the employee in between, you can't deal with a situation if you can't be factual. So you can't say to them, in the last month you were late 10 times. Okay, you're still not improving. And the employer said to you, that's not true, you know, I was only late 2 times. Now, if you don't know factually about 10 times, you can't have that discussion with the employee. You accept what the employee said and you say, okay, maybe it looked like 10 times to me, you know, whatever. But if you are doing what you need to do and you've been documenting it and looking at the evidence, then you would be able to speak factually. As a matter of fact, I noticed, as I said, within the last year and a half, that within the public sector again, that some of the work plans I saw in some of the agencies had a column in there that they're asking for evidence of whatever is being written in terms of the employee's performance, you know, for each particular items. So if attendance was one of the things that had been written in there in terms of one of the remedial things that the employee needed to improve and was written into their goals and objectives from the last performance appraisal. And you have now written in the achievement column, in the results column, that this behavior has not improved. There is a column now that is asking you to say what was the evidence that it has not improved. Or I'm also seeing where before the achievement, the evidence that is going to be required must be set down in the work plan. So like from the beginning, it would have said review of the attendance log. In this case, would have been the evidence that you were going to be monitoring or whatever. And then when you get to the time now where you're going to do the appraisal, then you would have said, well, in the results column that, you know, attendance still did not improve. Log revealed employee still 10 times late each quarter, or, you know, for 2 quarters or whatever it is. So if you are going to be a coach, you have to be prepared to keep factual reports. Okay. The next one is, as we talked a lot about already, that you have to be able to give feedback. This one is also important. We have talked a little about it. You have to be able to explore and diagnose what exactly is the performance problem. What is happening if there's a problem with the performance? And we tell you now that in coaching, you can't coach or you can't give feedback in general if you can't explore what our root cause is. Okay, you have to explore the root cause of something before you can begin to bring about a solution. What is causing this? So like she just said that, for instance, you'd have to find out what is making this person late without being intrusive, what is really happening, you know, etc. Okay. And then we have spoken a lot about development. The next key behavior required of you as a manager. Hello. Hello. The other thing you have to be able to do is to be able to develop the employees. And there are several ways you go about that. It's not all about sending them to courses or whatever, but pointing them in directions where they can actually find information, you know, finding training for them if needs be, you know, allowing them to do readings and that sort of stuff. So giving them assignments, on the job assignments that allow them to develop. So here we have functions and we have behaviors, okay? Oh, now we have some fun with this. And this is when I miss my face-to-face class, because in the face-to-face class, I usually ask you to identify which one of these you are. Who did some reading about this? Anybody did some reading about this? I want somebody to tell me a little bit about this. Now, all of us are born with certain traits, and all of us have styles of behavior. You're going to look at me and you're going to try to figure out which one of these I am, right? Fine. And each of us has a style of how we behave. And when we get into coaching, those styles or those traits will come into play. And we need to identify what our style is so that we can either improve on it or use it wisely, etc. Okay? So we said there are 4 coaching styles, and the first style we speak about is the driver, the second one, the persuader, the third one, the amiable, and the fourth one, the analyzer. Now, this is a mini session kind of a larger aspect of how this can be done. Okay, we have a whole course in some other cases, maybe in the psychology program, or if you want to be a certified coach, you have to get into a lot of training with this. So this is just a capsule out of it. You have things like the Myers-Briggs analysis that will tell you what your style is. I think some of the psychometric testing that is being done will also identify the styles. But it is important for you as a coach and somebody as a leader or somebody who's going to give feedback to know what your behavior is, what your style is, okay? For instance, somebody gave us the example earlier on, I can't remember who it was, of the person who would say, I am not a teacher, okay? And as you go along, you probably will recognize where that falls in these styles. So let us talk a little bit about these styles. And I'm going to I'm going to ask you to tell me, first of all, when we say somebody's a driver, what do you think we mean? How does that person behave? Come, let's have some fun with this. Let's have some fun with this. If I say that you have the personality of a driver, what kind of behaviors you think that person is exhibiting?
They take control.
Tell me.
It's the court. The court decides, like what the employee should do, and like when to do it and how to do it.
Okay. Who else?
Miss Shanique speaking.
Yeah.
I think it means that they naturally will gravitate towards being in leadership positions and are quick to take action.
Okay. Anybody else? Now these are personality styles, okay? These are personality styles. So come, who else? Who else is telling me?
I would like to try.
Wait, I hear two persons, one at a time. Who's first? Go ahead.
This is Mary Kay. It may sound negative, but that person may be pushy and they might take you out of your comfort zone.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Okay. Who else? Somebody else.
Miss, I'd like to try. So when I think of the driver, this is Michelle.
Okay, Michelle.
Okay, so when I think of the driver coaching style, I was thinking of a literal driver where, you know, a driver main aim is to reach their destination. So I'm believing that this type of coach is very goal oriented and is focused on reaching the goal, being the main leader and pushing whoever he or she is coaching to reach the goal or the end result, which is their destination.
Okay. Anybody else?
They are driven by the goal to be attained.
Okay. Who's that? Who's talking? Remember, I can't see all of you on the
Sorry, my
side.
apologies. That's Shauna.
Okay. Go ahead. Anybody else? Has anybody ever been told that they're a driver? Has anybody ever told any of you that you're a driver?
Sometimes.
Who is that? Who's talking?
It's Damian.
Yes, Damian. They tell you you're a driver, right?
At times.
Why they tell you you're a driver?
Because depending on the situation at hand, most of the time, especially if there are a lot of things that might be time sensitive, I tend to instruct or tell the person what they need to do to be able to achieve whatever result needs to be, whatever result we're trying to achieve. So instead of trying to allow them to get to it on their own, I'm kind of very direct and say that this is what needs to happen. This is what you need to do.
Okay, all of you have good bits and pieces. When we think of a person who's a driver, okay, a lot of times drivers are regarded as hard taskmasters because they're very direct, they're very assertive. So a leader who is a driver is very direct, very assertive, not interested sometimes in what caused you to do what you're doing. They just want the facts. And I'm not interested in why it happened. I just want to know what happened. I'm not interested in why it happened. They want the facts. They may not give feedback, proper feedback, okay? And a lot of times you can't figure that person out either. That person is almost like what we call a closed shop. I just want this task done and I want you to do it this way, and I want it to be done by such and such a time. And they will probably speak very very quickly, okay? Like they might mandate and tell you that this is the way it is to be done, and there's no other way, okay? And they, as I said, they're just dealing with facts, etc. Okay, that's the driver. All right, let's go down to the persuader. I'm going to come back and tell you some more about these. Let's talk about the persuader. When we say somebody is a persuader, what kind of personality is this? How does this person behave? How does this person behave?
Mrs.
Second try.
Go ahead.
Right. This kind of person tends to give details about what needs to be done by
Who is
explaining
speaking?
things.
Who is speaking?
Oral read.
Okay, Haral. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So I'm saying the persuader tend to try to get buy-in to a situation by explaining what needs to be done, and probably try to get some form of feedbacks outlining the benefits of what needs to be done and so forth.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Mrs. Kerry K. I'd summarize them into one word. I'd say they're a negotiator.
Okay. Anybody else? Come, I want some more participation. I don't let me go in the list tonight, you know, because that's what I'm about to do.
Miss?
Okay, Miss.
Go ahead, Camille.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the persuader is one who, similar to what Horail said, he or she will describe the particular situation, you know, outlining all the benefits, explaining why it's worth doing or considering. That person seeks to convince you and to influence you in a particular direction. They may use various techniques, the tone of voice, the manner. It's very convincing and charismatic maybe. And so ultimately, they lead you onto the path that they're directing you to by convincing you totally by their whole delivery that this is worth pursuing.
Okay. Go ahead. There was somebody else. Go ahead. Somebody else was speaking. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
this is Anne, Miss. As probably just going to give a little scenario. We have 2 years ago, Hope United sent 6 persons to our office to work for a period. This particular Miss, we noticed she's very detailed, very enthusiastic, very organized and willing to work. And they're always saying to her, boy, Mrs. Emil, have you under arm, you're a workaholic. And I'm always saying to her, listen, your reputation precedes you, and what you do, how you work, you're being monitored. Now, this individual last year became the top overall civilian at JDF, all because I'd say to her, don't listen to them. They're, you know, but don't follow and adapt their attitude of not performing. And I'm always telling her the benefits to the organization, you know, what will happen to her in the long run. When her term was finished with Hope, she's now currently with us as a clerk because of my prodding her, my telling her, you know, the benefits, you know, of the organization, what will happen to her, continue being good, you know, persuading her, just like what my colleague Horal and Camille had said. You know, so it's part about telling the individual, pushing them on, telling them the benefits of the organization, and encouraging them to perform.
Good. Okay. Who's next? All right, nobody else is sharing on this one. Okay, well, I'm going to go in the list for the next 2. So let me just warn you. All of what you have said adds up. The persuader is somebody who is assertive. It's not that they're laid back. They are assertive. They're assertive. But their style is to try and sell you what they want you to do. Okay? And just like Anne was saying as well, as Camille said something, all of you had very good points. You explain why it is beneficial, you know, and in some cases you explain what are the repercussions as well. You find that persons who are persuaders tend to have a whole different body language as well, because body language as a coach is very important. And you find that the persuaders have more of a warm body language, you know, really talking with you, the tone is different, etc. And they might say to you, you know, I sat where you sat, like you might even hear me say to you sometimes, I was a student. I was an adult student myself. Okay. So don't be afraid to do something, etc. Negotiating with you. Okay, let us plan to do this. You agree and you get a commitment, etc. So that's the persuader. So I now come to the amiable. Okay, who is telling me about the amiable? All right, nobody's telling me about the amiable, so let me go in the list then. Okay. Since you won't volunteer, I have to kind of force feed you a little bit. So I'm going to go into the list. Okay.
Can I try?
Yeah, who is this?
Read it.
Go ahead, Aurel.
Amiable. When I think of amiable, I think about a spirit of camaraderie where people working together, they are happy doing what they do. So I'm thinking this person try to please everyone, ensuring that everyone have some form of comfort in doing what they're doing. They try to put it towards you, strike compromise and so on, take your opinion and feedbacks.
Okay.
I think.
Miss and support. This is Michelle again. I'm in agreement with Horel. I believe this type of coach try to work or to support whoever he or she is coaching, and they try to focus on building strong relationships, and they avoid hurting others' feelings, and if there are disagreements, they work on the disagreements and explain exactly what is happening so that there can be unity or a strong bond.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? All right, let me go in the list. Katie. Is Katie here?
Yes,
Katie?
miss.
Okay,
Yes,
Katie.
ma'am.
Katie, what is your thoughts about an amiable?
Miss, based on my reading, I'm thinking the amiable is, is someone who wants to do everything to make whoever is working be comfortable in their own surrounding.
Okay. Is Miss Prendergast here? Is Miss Prendergast here? What is her first name? Is Miss Prendergast here? What is Miss Prendergast's first name? Let's see. Let me see what your first name is. Since you won't answer me. Jody Ann. Is Jody Ann here? Okay, she's not answering. Okay.
Miss, I'm not seeing her name in the list of participants.
I see her name though.
No, I mean on Zoom. Okay,
Yep,
maybe.
Yep.
You're seeing it? Okay.
Yep, that's what I'm looking on. Okay, what about, I'm going to see who else I wanted to, if somebody I just wanted to. Where is Leon? Miss Leon. We have a Miss Leon in here, right?
That's me, Miss. I was talking a lot today.
Who
More
is
or less.
that?
Carrie K.
Carrie K, you talk a lot. Where is Tiffany? Tiffany? Is Tiffany here? Tiffany is muted.
Miss, I was in another meeting while I'm in class. I must apologize. I stepped away.
Wow, so why you didn't say something to me, Tiffany? Because I've called you a couple of times. Anyway, what is your feedback on amiable? We're talking about amiable. What is your feedback on?
Basically, they're the one that focuses on pleasing individuals.
Okay. Somebody has a lot of interruptions there.
That's mine. I apologize. I'm muting now.
Okay, okay, okay. All right, so let me move off of this one. And basically, all the feedback is pretty good. What we need to be careful of though with the amiable is that amiable is not usually an assertive person. That is one of the things that we have to watch, where we have a manager who is an amiable. He wants, yes, to please, or she wants to please everybody, and wants everybody to be happy. And we find that the amiables tend to be more subjective in their judgments rather than objective. And you know, this amiable comes across in the rate of errors. Remember, we talked about rate of errors and leniency. The amiable is usually a very lenient person. You know, might actually tell the employees how to do things in a particular way, you know, and what is, yes, the right way to do it, not necessarily developing them, okay? Is sometimes uncertain in what they're saying, you know, they speak and pause and stuff, okay? And may give you some, what we call what ifs, you know, what if so and so, and you know, so and so, well, let's try this and let's try that. But the amiable is not usually an assertive person, okay? As I said, we're coming back to all four of them. So let me go down to the analyzer. Who is going to respond, or are you going to let me go into my list again? I notice a lot of persons have left the class, okay? And I won't issue any warning about that because I'll see the results of it later on. Okay, but I noticed that almost a half of the class has left the class. Okay. But this is an important component of your course. Okay, let's hear about the analyzer. Who is an analyzer? What kind of personality do you see in an analyzer?
Miss?
Yes?
Okay, this is
Who's this? Just tell me who it is, you know?
Suzanne.
Yes, Anne.
Suzanne, my mic is kind of low.
Okay, Suzanne.
An analyzer, thinking that sort of an analyzer always tries to get in detail, like give detail, try to look on all the different sides of a situation, and they'll go to extreme lengths just to get their point across. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Miss? Yes, miss.
Okay, I hear two persons there. Who's going first?
Read.
Okay.
To add to what my colleague there said a while ago, I think this kind of person tend to stick to like mostly facts as guidance, or may most time refer to policies and guidelines and how things are written and to be done. They are more what I'd say process oriented, and are mostly guided by policy.
Okay. Somebody else was sharing around the same time. Who else was sharing?
Nicola was sharing.
Yes, Nicola, go ahead.
I too was going to say that the analytical person is more of a process person, more facts, more data they're driven by evidence that are hard, and less of on the emotional side.
Mm-hmm.
The analytical person always choose to back whatever the decisions are from information or facts or data.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, Miss Mitchell. I want to add, I'm echoing the same sentiments where this type of coach, they look for facts and details, but to add as well, this type of coach will question things due to the fact that they are focused on details and they have their details and facts. So once there's something or something is not in accordance with what they think or their views, they do not hesitate to question such and support it with their facts and data that they have.
Correct. Well, all of you, what you've said, yes, is fits right into this style. The analyzer, yes, is somebody who, as we would say, crossed every T and dot every I. You know, really just interested in you following the procedures as they are. Okay. An analyzer is not usually very assertive either. Okay, not assertive, but is very similar to the behavior of the driver. Okay, because they are not interested in how you necessarily feel about something. They're really interested in using the facts and the procedures, just like you're saying. Now, what is important for you to remember about these four styles is that we need a balance, okay? Because each of us are not built to just stand up as a brick. We are a brick that has a color, we are a brick that has a size, we're a brick that has a shape, you know, all that sort of stuff. So you have to remember that all of these styles have a place. How you use them is what is most important. So there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. I can be an amiable, okay, but I'm not going to be successful if I don't have a bit of an analyzer in me or a bit of a driver in me, because what is going to happen is at the end of the day, I'm such a nice and happy-go-lucky manager that when I look at the unit, or somebody comes in to look at your unit, your productivity is low, you have a nice bunch of happy employees, they're all sharing the cake that somebody brought in and sharing the cookies and the candy and whatever, but the productivity of the unit is low because I don't have the personality of a driver, nor do I have the personality of the analyzer. I just want everybody to be happy and whatever. So you find that managers that swing heavily, for instance, to the side of being amiable are not usually necessarily good leaders because they can't get the work done. On the converse though, persons who are driver and cannot balance with some of the other skills are usually seen as rough and harsh and hard, and the morale of the unit is low and the people are unhappy. Yes, the work is coming out, but people can't wait to get an opportunity to opt out of that unit. They're always applying for every job that is posted, whether they're interested in the job or not, because they just want to get out of that lady's hair, okay, or that man's hair, as we would say, because the driver is cold, hard, okay? No softness about them, you know, whatever. And then you look at the persuader. The persuader is a style, and yes, the persuader tends to be assertive, but the persuader also needs to balance, and you find that a persuader should also try to balance some of the facts of the analyzer, you know, so that there's a good balance. So you have to know yourself. And I hope that as you listen to this evening, that each of you kind of look at yourselves and try to figure where you fall and what it is you need to sort of pick up on. And even as you work in your groups, you should be able to identify these persons within your group. And as the group leader, understand how it is you may have to what we do flex when we do a whole session on what we call typing, okay? we have to teach people how to flex, and it's not the dance I'm talking about, right? I know there's a dance called flex, right? But there's a dance called flex. You're not listening to me, or you're not laughing with me tonight. All right, don't bother laugh with me.
Not that we're aware of, miss. We know Flary.
Of course, there's a dance named flex. Nobody know that dance?
No.
Eh?
I
I don't
don't.
understand. Please.
Well, I am sure. I'm sure I.
Cobra.
What? What?
That was Cobra's song.
Is the Cobra one, miss?
I know there's a dance called flex. So anyway, and you never hear people say you never hear people say you need to learn how to flex. Eh? You have
Yeah,
never
like
heard the term, you need to learn how to flex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Well,
nice.
what these styles are telling you is that you need to learn how to flex. You need to look at yourself and learn how to flex.
Miss, can you show us that dance, miss?
No, man. When I get up and you see my size, you really want me to dance for you? No, sir.
Okay, miss.
Miss.
I like to dance. I like to dance. I love to dance. I like music and I like to dance. I listened to Barry Hammond on when was it? Sunday night? Oh, I enjoyed that. I stayed up and I listened to it and whatever. Yeah, I like music. I don't like what I call Tegare music, but I like good music and whatever. But the point is that you need to know yourself as a leader and as a supervisor and look at your personality and decide, is this the best I can be? And am I getting results? You know, because a lot of those rate errors we spoke about are also committed by persons who, in some cases, as we said, they want to seem to be hard and harsh, or the ones that are the amiables that want to seem to be so lenient. And when you look at the scores, you see the distribution and you get worried because everybody has a good score. Nobody's doing badly, but when you look at the productivity of a unit, it doesn't match up. So we always tell you it's good to know your style. And if you have ever had a chance, some of you might have been through Myers-Briggs. I don't know if any of the organizations that you work for had put you through the Myers-Briggs test so that you know your style and your type and you know how you operate and that sort of stuff. But it's an interesting process. But as a supervisor or leader, even just in your own way now, in how you deal with others and how you want you to be perceived, it's good to look at what your style is. Okay, you can do some further reading on this. There's a lot of stuff published on actually what we call typing, which is, you know, knowing what your personality style is and where you can go with it. Some of the psychometric tests will actually analyze that. I know, for instance, if you applied for a job in the insurance industry to do insurance sales, they're going to put you through a psychometric test because they want to see what your style is and what type of personality you have. Yes, Horel?
Miss, is this one where they indicated that no coach will have dominantly one style as a situation dictates, you will have to call upon one of these as to deal with a situation. So just like the leadership style, you will not be absolutely a democratic person because variety of situation may arise, may call for you to be autocratic and stamp your feet and do a thing. And another time, you may be required to be a laser sphere and let people be. So is it the same with the style?
Yes, which is what I was saying to you, that you have to strike a balance, okay? You need to have a balance and you have to be able to have a combination of the styles and you have to be able to know when to use them, yes, based on the situation. I mean, for example, you may have been working with an employee who you're trying to have that person improve their performance, and over a period of maybe more than a year, and you're not seeing that performance improve. then you may have to resort to, say, for instance, being the driver, because you'll have to set out what are the repercussions now. You know, you might end up having to say to the person, you know, if you have another poor performance, you realize that you know, you may face termination or separation or whatever. You know, so you have to assess what the situation is, and you have to be what we call adaptive, and adjust the style sometimes based on the situation. But on a day-to-day basis, you decide where you want to be in terms of, you know, your normal behaviors, what, you know, what you want to be seen as and stuff. But when you're faced with situations, you'll have to be able to adjust your style accordingly if you're faced with a situation. And as you're working with the employee and you look at the employee needs, you also have to keep in mind that based on whatever that situation is that you're dealing with that employee, you might have to adjust your style, whether it means that you may have to be more of a persuader than an analyzer, or more of a persuader for that particular situation than a driver. But at the end of the day, you still have to ensure that you are going to get the desired outcome. So you can't be just, say for instance, a full persuader, and you're this extremely nice person, and at the end of the day that employee's performance has not improved, and you're carrying this person year in, year out as a poor performer in the unit. Can't work like that. So yes, you're right that you have to be able to adjust your styles based on the situation as well. Okay, so we're going to move off of this. I hope you'll all take a look, even within your groups, as you try to do group work. This is an important thing in group dynamics. As you try to do group work, try and understand each other in your group, and look and see what works best, you know, and how you balance, and you know, you can balance the behaviors in the group. Okay. So we give you a little process that you can follow in terms of if you're going to set up a coaching process. This is just a little guide in terms of how you should the steps that you should take. So we tell you that the first thing you need to do is to set the developmental goal. Now remember, developmental goals can be for further development, or they can be remedial. So you decide which one they are, okay? And you set out what those goals are. This is what we're working towards, okay? So you don't just go into a meeting with an employee, maybe the first time you talk about the fact that, you know, I think we are going to have to look at your performance. I'm going to be arranging for you to get more feedback, or give you more feedback or whatever based on maybe your last appraisal, or I've noticed that your reports are deteriorating or something like that. So you set the stage, and then you tell them that you're going to identify after that first initial conversation. Then you look at what really you think needs to be rectified or improved or further developed, you know, whatever. And you set those goals. Now be realistic when you set goals, because you can't set 20 goals for somebody to improve. So you might have to look at what is happening within a department, you know, what's happening within a unit, what does the organization require, you know, what is this individual performance to be like, okay, when you're deciding to prioritize which goals you're going to set, okay? And then you identify for the person where they can find the resources. So like, for instance, I used Excel as an example before. If it's Excel training, then you identify where the training is going to be. Is it something that can be learned online? Is there a book that you can give the person, or are you going to have to send them out to a class, etc., etc.? And what is going to be the approach? So you might say to the person, okay, there's a class at UCC, and it's on a Saturday. Can you go to a Saturday class? Or it's on a Monday. Can you go to a Monday evening class? I want you to go and get a get a certificate in using these particular softwares. Mightn't be just Excel, might be the whole Microsoft suite. So you identify what's to happen and what is going to be the approach. So the approach would be to go and have some training done, okay? And you implement it, okay? Whatever you decide to do, you make sure that it is a written contract between the employee and the organization or the department, okay? And it becomes a part of somebody's file if you're going to do, you know, formal, if you're going to send somebody out to do something formally. If it's something that you're going to handle by you meeting with the person, then you still need to set it up properly, okay? In terms of what will be the resources you'll be using, you know, what are you going to show somebody how to do a spreadsheet? So you'll tell them that you will be providing sample spreadsheets to them and whatever, and what is the strategy. We'll meet once a week and we'll go through the elements of a spreadsheet, etc. And you still need to put it down in writing, implement the strategy, okay? And based on the time frame that you have set, it is up to you to observe and document, as we've been talking about, what is taking place, okay? Is the behavior improving? I mean, you know, is the employee improving with the spreadsheets or attending the classes? The midterm exam was a good mark, etc., etc. And of course, you must give feedback, okay? You must give feedback. So basically, you have to implement it, okay? And you have to have a way in which you are going to monitor all of this for it. And also, when you're doing it, you will have to indicate to the person what you expect the outcome to be, okay? So you set time frames, you set outcomes, and you monitor what is happening, and you set the times where you'll meet or whatever, you know, to give progress feedback, etc. So this is just a simple little flow chart to help you if you're going to set up such a process with an employee, okay? Here are some little tips for you as you try to set up that process, because sometimes we find that people set up too much stuff, you know, for somebody, and we have what we call cognitive overload. The person can't handle it. You're getting burnt out, you know, that sort of stuff. So it's important for you to recognize some of the things that could prevent the employee from carrying out these activities, okay? So it's good for you to understand what some of the constraints could be when you're setting it up, okay? And these may be constraints for you too, the manager. So when you're setting it up, you need to also look at how much time you have. How much time do you have to monitor this activity? Don't set up something that you can't monitor, okay? So you need to look at your time constraints. You need to look at your situational constraints. Is there something that's going to prevent you and the employee from observing from carrying out what's going to happen, and from you, the manager, from observing it? Because you can't, as a manager or supervisor, write about something that you have not observed. So you might have been setting these every week meetings, and then after the first 2 meetings, you can't have these meetings anymore. And yet at the end of the time, coming up to the appraisal time, you are going to attempt to assess how the employee performed on this particular activity, but you were never able to follow it up. So you need to be aware of what is happening. For instance, you put somebody in a course. You can't observe how the person is doing in the course, but you can say, okay, you're waiting for the midterm grade or whatever. So you have to know what you're doing. What is the situation that you have put the person in, okay? And what are the constraints of that situation? So somebody who would have gone to a course like we are online tonight, you can't observe that because you're not a participant in the course. So you will have to decide then, how am I going to monitor that? How am I going to know if that person did well or not? Okay. And the same thing happens if you put in an activity that is not structured. You tell somebody, I just want you to go and learn about spreadsheets. So go online and look at how spreadsheets are done, etc., etc. That is very unstructured. So you have to be careful with that too, okay? Or you might tell somebody to read a book, but you don't require like a report back on the book. You might tell them to go and read a management book or read a marketing book or a particular chapter in a book. And so I read the book. So what? You know, but you, the manager, have no way of knowing what really took place with the reading of that chapter, etc., etc. Okay. And sometimes you have to wait until a whole activity is finished before you can assess it. So be cognizant of what you're doing when you're setting up these developmental plans. Documentation is important. Okay, you cannot commit everything to memory, and that's why we speak about minimizing cognitive load. Okay, and the same thing is important in general in the performance management. Remember we spoke about the critical incident log? Anybody remembers that? Hello? You all gone to sleep?
Yes, miss.
Guess we remember that.
Well, one of the reasons why you use a critical incident log is to minimize what we call cognitive load. You can't, you only have one brain, you know, and your brain only have like 4 compartments. So if you have 20 employees that you are supervising or 10, you think you can remember everything about those 10 employees? So the same thing happens here when you're coaching. You cannot remember everything about the feedback sessions you gave and whatever. So we say to you, please document so that you minimize what is happening with cognitive load, okay? And it's important again to create trust. Documentation helps you to create trust because you can be factual. So that's another reason why you should keep meeting notes, meeting records, you know, etc. Plan for the future. Okay. Whatever you do, you should also ensure that whatever the remedial work you're doing is also going to help to improve future performance. And we say provide legal protection. Okay. Remember in whatever you're doing and in your communication and in your dialogue that you don't use terminology that could seem to be abusive or discriminatory, etc. Persons have recourse. So whatever you're doing with your activities, as we say, ensure that you're protecting yourself and your organization, because if somebody gets terminated, that file becomes a part of any information that may be asked for. Okay, in terms of if somebody decided to head down to the labor board or sue you for unfair dismissal based on performance and stuff, that file is a legal file. So please ensure that whatever you're documenting is properly documented and it's accurate, okay? And it can be used in case of litigation, okay? It can be an objective piece of information if there's litigation at hand, okay? Okay, we also tell you that, pardon me, we also tell you that when you're going to do the documentation, you know, this is just following up again because the documentation is so important that you need to be specific, okay? Write out exactly what it was that took place, okay, the event, the outcomes. Do not make general statements like, he's an awful fellow, or he displayed awful behavior, or never usually answers questions, that sort of stuff. Okay, you have to be careful with phrases and stuff like that that you use. Again, keeping in mind that these documents can end up in litigation sometimes. Okay. We tell you to use adjectives sparingly, so like words but good, poor. You have to keep in mind that unless you can measure, you're doing something that would allow you to measure what was the good performance or what was the poor performance, then please use it very sparingly. Okay, please use it sparingly. You have to be careful with that, because somebody will say to you, so okay, you said he had good performance, but what is that? So we find that sometimes some of these adjectives and adverbs are ambiguous. They're not clear. Okay. Throughout the coaching period, good behavior was exhibited. What does that mean? Okay, that's an ambiguous statement, so you have to be careful with that. Also remember to balance positive and negatives, and this is always a part of giving feedback. It doesn't matter whether it's part of the coaching, even in doing your appraisals. You need to learn to balance the positive and the negatives. We usually start off, when you're doing an appraisal, we usually start off with a positive statement. Okay, you know, it's been a good 6 months, and we're going to talk about, you know, the things that went well and the things that, you know, didn't go so well, but everything has a balance. So we're going to look at, you know, what the picture looks like, you know, start off with some opening statements like that. Okay, again, focus on job related information. Has nothing to do with the person's personal look, how they look or whatever. We tend to, as I said, go off onto these biases. So try and ensure that in your documentation, you deal only with job related information. Okay, very, very important. Okay, and maybe you speak only to the things that you have set down as the goals for, you know, for them to achieve. So try and not go off at a tangent. Okay, be comprehensive. Make sure that it's a proper report, total report. Okay, everything that was supposed to take place is discussed in the report. Standardize your procedure. Set up a procedure for yourself in terms of how you would even put a report together. Okay, so that if you had to do this for 5 or 6 employees, your procedure is the same. You have a process, and nobody can accuse you of favoritism or not being clear or complete, because you have a process that you're going to follow. Okay, so set up a method and a format of how you're going to write your report, etc. Okay, and ensure that you describe what you observe, not what somebody told you. Okay, if you are the coach or you've gotten a peer, these are the ground rules you'll have to set. You know, if you're using a peer and it's peer-to-peer coaching, remember I said to you, you really should have a manual that you can give, or a set of procedures, or a set of what we call SOPs, standard operating procedures, to that peer who is going to counsel his or her peer. Okay, so these are the types of things that you will set up in this process document, in terms of what are the methods and what are the steps to be carried out. How do you observe behavior, etc., like that. Okay, and you would use what we call behavioral language. So what are some of the behavioral adjectives that you could use if you were going to describe behavior that you observed? What are some of the behavioral adjectives that you could use? We've talked such a lot about behavioral factors and behaviors. and a lot of stuff about behaviors and behavior. What are some of the things that come to your mind if I'm going to describe your what I observed? What are some of the adjectives that come to mind? What are some of the phrases?
If the individual is goal-oriented, display a positive attitude towards maybe team building.
Good. Good. Another example. Another example.
The worker demonstrates initiative.
Okay, fine. Well,
The
go
work,
ahead.
the worker have good interpersonal skills.
Well, you have to be careful with the word good.
Well,
you know, but and if you're going to say interpersonal skills, you might have to state what the skills are. You might have to clarify it, okay?
okay, communicate well with peers.
Yes, you can say that, yes. So the thing about it is that you should not seem subjective in any of the statements that you're making, in any part of a report that you are writing or a document that you're preparing, you know, whether it is the evaluation document at the end of whatever this coaching activity might have been, you know, etc. So these are just some tips as you develop that. As we're coming to the end of this module, okay, as we're coming to the end of this module, let us look at a couple more things. In any area that you're giving feedback, these rules apply, okay? It doesn't matter whether you're giving feedback in the performance appraisal or you're just going to give some feedback, not even in a full coaching session, but just going to give the employees some general feedback. It's important for you to observe some of this. And the first one is we say timely. Now, timely is very, very, very important because when you look at the labor laws, there are some provisions in the labor law about the fact that you cannot take actions. You cannot like suspend somebody or take some actions if you have not dealt with the situation within a particular period of time after the situation has occurred. And that is something you always have to keep in mind. Somebody can't do something today and 2 months later you decide that's when you're going to handle it, okay? Or 5 weeks later, that's when you're going to handle it. So again, when you get over to Dr. Taylor's class, you'll see that as far as discipline is concerned and dealing with discipline, that there are some provisions in the labor law for timeliness, okay? Timeliness of hearings, timeliness of meting out different forms of discipline. So the same thing we are telling you here is that your feedback should be timely, meaning not 2 weeks after the occurrence has taken place, okay? Not two weeks after the occurrence has taken place, but within a reasonable period of time. So if something happened yesterday, you probably should try to deal with it like today, okay? Not 2 weeks after it does happen, okay? And the more you give feedback, the better results you're going to get, and the least defensive that somebody is going to become. Now, you can't give feedback every day. You're not going to be able to give feedback every day, but set a reasonable period of time, especially if you have somebody on a coaching plan, okay? Set a reasonable period of time by which you will give the feedback and give it on an ongoing basis, okay?
Yes.
With some, yeah?
Sorry, just to add to the timely effectiveness of time, it is also important that we address that part promptly, because let's say that the employee does something that is inappropriate and it is not addressed timely, there can be a reoccurrence of the same issue that can escalate into something even more worse than before. Had the supervisor or maybe the person address it immediately, it could have prevented a reoccurrence of that behavior being displayed.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's important that you be able to take corrective action. And as I said, there are some provisions in the law where if you do not take timely action, you can't take the action at all. Okay, so that's why I'm saying it's very important to, understand if you're both supervisor, manager, or in HR, it's important for you to understand the disciplinary code and the provisions under the law as well. Because if you don't act in a timely fashion, you cannot take certain actions. And feedback does not become effective if it's not dealt with in a timely manner. And we use the word timely because basically we're saying it might have happened just before closing time today. You probably cannot handle it before closing time, but it's something that should be handled very early the next day. Okay. When you teach customer service training, for instance, we have a rule called the sunset rule, which says that, for instance, if you get a complaint and you get it in the middle of the day, the aim should be to handle it before the sun goes down. Okay. And I would love to tell you the same thing in the organization, in terms of when you have situations or you need to give feedback, give it in a timely manner. So if you have somebody on a coaching plan, make sure that you're not waiting till the end of that coaching plan to give the feedback. And effective feedback is frequent, meaning it's on an ongoing basis. I can't have a 3-month coaching plan and I have given you feedback once in the 3 months. Okay. So in setting it up again, and the same thing with the overall performance. A lot of this ties back into the overall performance management, because we tell you in performance management, any feedback you give should be on an ongoing basis. And it is something that should be written into the leadership goals. When you're setting goals and objectives with people who are in supervisory positions, one of their goals that the objectives that they're measured against should be the fact that they are able to communicate with the staff, on an ongoing basis, etc. And remember, I also spoke about doing employee surveys and including an area within the employee survey. And one of the questions you would have asked in the employee survey is, does my manager communicate with me? My manager communicates with me. And when you look in the Likert scale ranking across, it might say sometimes, never, always, etc. Or the question might be asked in a different way and says that my manager always communicates with me. And then the scale above will say agree, doesn't agree, strongly agree, uncertain or other or whatever. But communication is very important, and that is where the feedback comes in. We say it should be specific, meaning it should be about what is happening and nothing else. Keep it straight. Don't get into a whole lot of side talk about it that has nothing to do with it. Verifiable, meaning can what you're talking about be verified? Remember, I just spoke about the columns sometimes in the work plan, or having a critical incidents log, or having some other kind of document that you can verify what is taking place with what you're speaking about or the behavior, etc. Consistent, okay? Consistency is important overall in performance. Very, 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 very important, okay? In other words, we shouldn't have communication that is all about praise when you meet with somebody, or all about something harsh. Okay, there's to be a balance, and it shouldn't be different from one employee to the other, meaning because I like this person, I bring them in, and yes, I'm going to coach them and give them feedback, but I'm going to be that nice persuader, and I try to soften the blow, and I say a whole lot of nice things, but then I bring John in after that, and I just want to hang him if I could, you know. So you need to be consistent in your own performance. Privacy is very important. I've seen persons go into the middle of a department and reprimand an employee right there and then. That's never to be done. If you're somebody who doesn't have an office, but your department has a conference room or something, then you make some arrangements to be able to use the conference room. Whatever is you're saying to that person is between yourself and that person. It doesn't belong to the whole department. So that privacy is very important, and it doesn't matter whether it's a negative situation or a positive situation. Feedback should always include whatever the consequences are going to be, okay? So that the employee understands the consequence of whatever the behaviors are, etc. So it could be a good performer, you know, and you want that person to go and do some additional training or whatever. You should set out what the consequences are. You know, the person can say, well, I don't want to do this training now. And you will have to set out what the consequences are. This training is a skill that the department is going to require in the next 6 months or whatever. And this is why we want you to take it. We can't force you to take it, but you need to become aware of what the consequences are. And the same thing with the inappropriate behavior, the negative behavior. Somebody who behaves negatively, when you bring them in to coach them about that, you need to tell them what is the consequence of that negative behavior if it occurs again. Okay, and of course, your organization has a disciplinary code, so you can refer to the disciplinary code as such. We always tell you that when you start off with a discussion, a feedback discussion, start off with describing first what it is you're going to be talking about, or what the situation is. Okay, that's why we say descriptive first and then evaluation after. So start off by describing what is the situation you're going to talk about, and then evaluate what has taken place, etc. Okay. Performance continuum. Okay. You also need to explain what is good behavior and what is poor behavior. What are the expectations? What is expected as good behavior? What is regarded as poor behavior, etc. Now remember, you have to vary these depending on what the situation is, why you're giving feedback. Okay, you always have to look at what your situation is, you know, and why you're giving feedback. Okay. The other one is always see if there's a pattern. Always try to identify if there's a pattern, okay, in the performance. It's always easier to bring about a solution if you can identify a pattern. So most times in the case of poor performance, you can identify the pattern, okay, rather than just one event. You're never supposed to rate anybody's performance overall, as you know, in the appraisal process based on one event that may have occurred. Remember, that was something we spoke about in the rate errors, okay? You're looking at a period of time. You may have one event that might stick out more than others, okay? But you have to balance it. You have to balance it out, okay? And if you can identify a pattern, it goes a far way for you to gain acceptance from the employee that, yes, this is something that occurred, and I agree that this is behavior that I won't repeat again or should not be repeated or whatever, and they understand what are some of the causes that led to their performing poorly, okay? The meeting should always be a confidence builder. Therefore, you have to watch your communication style. Okay. And always, and the same thing applies to the performance appraisal, always end on a positive note, no matter how bad the performance is, no matter how low the score is. Let that person leave with a feeling that there is hope. Okay? In other words, you will make statements like, I know you can improve. I trust you to go back and take this information and try to improve it and whatever. You need to know as a manager that you did your best as well and that you gave everybody a fair opportunity to improve. So that is what we speak about when we speak about the confidence builder. You have to express some confidence in the employee. After all, it's your employee. You might have inherited the person, but they're still yours. They've been entrusted to your care, and you still have to try to get them to improve performance, because remember, if the performance doesn't improve, your performance suffers as well as the leader. Okay. And the last one is a tool. You can also use this to encourage the employee to help provide the solutions. Okay. Allow the employee to give you some ideas as to how this person will improve their performance. Okay, remember we said that they are the owner and the director. So in terms of improving performance, let them give you solutions. In terms of additional performance or growth in performance, let them be a part of the discussion. Let them be a part of the solutions, help to come up with the solutions. Any questions? I know I've told you a lot here. Any questions? Any comments? We're winding down. Any questions? Any comments?
Yes, yes. I have a question / comment.
Sure.
So we have spoken about the efficacy of coaching styles, personality traits as it relates to the culture. However, I would like to get some information as it relates to barriers to coaching, both from the perspective of the employee as well as the manager, and how to effectively address those. Two.
You mean resistance? You mean resistance to coaching?
Exactly. That is one on the
Okay.
the part of the employee, and also for the manager. A scenario keeps popping in the back of my mind where within our society, you know, and people on a whole generally, they go into a profession for self-improvement and to be self-sufficient and resourceful. And one of the ways to do that is to climb the ladder that is established in the organization, the corporate ladder, rather. And to be a manager would be one such accomplishment in order to be resourceful, get well paid, and live a healthy, happy, and prosperous life thereafter. Not necessarily to be a coach to anyone, and as such might not be effective. How would you address persons with that particular mindset who simply want to do well at their job? And a way to do that is to be a leader, not necessarily to be a people manager, asking for a friend.
Say that last one again, Damien. Is Damien or Philip?
Philip. Yes.
Philip. Repeat that last one. There's a lot of stuff in that one.
As it relates to the manager, you know, some persons, they work to make money. They work to be self-sufficient, you know, and one of the ways to do that is to go up the corporate ladder and be a manager, and so you can get a better compensation, not necessarily to be a people manager or to coach people. And I'm seeing that from that perspective as, you know, will you know, dampen the effects of coaching. So how do we address that at that level, not necessarily from the employee, but that from the leader or the manager?
So you're asking now, somebody who has taken, let me deal with the last one first. Somebody who has taken a job as a manager, but really has no interest in developing the employees under his or her care.
That's correct. They just want to get paid, and so they can take care of themselves and their
But
family.
that person's manager, that person's director is who has that big responsibility now. Where if they notice that people are not developing, one of the signs of something like that is turnover. People opt out of a department or they don't stay long, the turnover is high, HR is getting a lot of complaints, etc., etc. Those are leadership problems and usually has to be dealt with by the person to whom that person reports. You can't change that person per se. That is a performance problem in the leadership factor, or goes back to some of the things that we spoke about in terms of management philosophy. That person's philosophy is, I'm just here and I will just carry out, and I can do this job myself, so I don't really need some of these people. So in terms of even developing some of the person, you find that that person may be spending long hours in the office doing some of that work himself or herself, because basically I want to get ahead and whatever. It's a very difficult thing, because if it is not dealt with by senior management, it just goes on. And even some of the senior managers are not perceptive enough to see that that department has high turnover or productivity is low, whatever, and be able to trace it back to the manager. It's one of the more difficult things to handle, but sometimes a board will step in when they start to look at, depending on the level of the person, when they start to look at what's happening in that area, why we're not achieving this, that, or whatever. Okay, and they now decide, well, they either have to make some shifts, or they tell this person, these things have to improve within your department or whatever. But you do have persons who come to work like that. I told a story some time ago about when I lived away and I lived in Washington for part of the time. I remember driving almost just about where they had the riots the other day, near the Capitol there, because I worked downtown Washington. And I was driving home one evening and I was behind a car, and I noticed the bumper sticker that said, it's hard to soar as an eagle when you work with a bunch of turkeys. And I said to myself, obviously, whoever is driving that car is a poor leader. That's the first thing that crossed my mind, because that was the bumper sticker. It's hard to soar as an eagle when you work with a bunch of turkeys, And I said to myself, there goes a poor leader, blaming the persons he works with and taking no responsibility. And basically it is saying, I can't get to where I am because I have a bunch of poor performers. But it's not something that can be easily dealt with unless the senior management is perceptive, or sometimes they start getting a lot of complaints, employees going to HR and giving a lot of complaints, and HR is forced now to give some feedback to the director and saying something is happening. We're getting a lot of, of complaints with regards to treatment or abusive manners in speaking and that sort of stuff, or harassment. But you as the average employee can't do anything about it unless you have been involved in something that directly affects you and you decide to go to HR and speak about it, and HR will say, well, give you some pointers because it might be a one-off situation, they're not getting more complaints, etc. Or it might be serious enough for them to decide that they need to speak to the director, this person's director. I might not have given you what you want, but it's one of those cases like that.
Right, or it can contribute to a vast number of data errors as well,
Well, that's what I'm saying. It contributes to a lot of things, the rate errors, sometimes harassment. Okay, harassment, and we are still not to the point out here where we're dealing with harassment in the workplace or bullying in the workplace properly. Okay, we have a couple of cases that have been just settled outside of court, but not reached the court yet. They're now trying to deal with sexual harassment laws. And a whole lot of dialogue is going on about that now. Okay. What was the first thing you asked?
As it relates to resistance to coaching as
Resistance to coaching.
and a part of
You can't force anybody to accept coaching. You can't force anybody to accept feedback. But when you do the appraisal, these are the things that you should have had proper documented evidence that these attempts were made to assist this employee to improve the performance. Coaching sessions were set up. Employee did not appear for the coaching sessions or did not carry out the ideas, the activities that were set out on the development plan. It is therefore the impression that the employee has no interest in improving this performance. You cannot force anybody to accept coaching. And this is why the first item that I showed you, we're building the relationship, that has everything to do with whether an employee accepts coaching or not.
Miss.
You can't build that relationship and try to persuade that person and let them see what is in it for them and the benefit of it, but also showing them what are the consequences of not participating in these feedback sessions. Then you just have to move to the next step. Yes, somebody was saying something?
Yeah, Rashina here. My organization, they do a monthly coaching and that's mandatory. So when you just reiterated that you can't force someone to do coaching, but there are consequences of not doing the coaching, but for us, it is mandatory.
Okay.
And at the end of it, the employee and the immediate supervisor have to discuss the positive, the negative areas to develop, areas that's going well, and so forth, and sign off on that, and that will place on the employee record. But it is mandatory for coaching to be done monthly.
Okay. Well, as I said, you have to set up the coaching plan. You have to set up the coaching plan. What type of organization you're in?
Financial sector, the banking.
Okay. 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 You have to set up the coaching plan. That's what I'm saying. It's not something that should be just dealt with verbally and say, you know, unless you're going to do just some informal coaching to maybe rectify something that you consider that is simple. But where you think there are real performance problems, a coaching plan must be developed, a formalized plan, and it must be documented. And as I said to you, it must have a time, you know, the frequency of the coaching, you know, and yes, the report must be written so that it becomes a part of the record. Okay. Okay, let's move on because we're finishing. We have, I think, 2 more slides and we will have to finish them before we leave here. Okay. Appraisal. Okay. We're kind of out of coaching now, but I wanted to bring some steps for the appraisals to you in terms of how you should conduct an appraisal. Now, let me see what we have left because I really wanted to spend some time on both this slide and the other slide. Let me see what we have left, because I think we only have one more. Where is my calendar? My calendar just disappeared. Where is my calendar? Oops, I just had my calendar here. I wanted to see how many more classes we have. One more after this before the presentations, right? Let's see. And let me see if I can leave this for our next class. I'm not sure. Let me just check here because I wanted to spend a little time with you on it. We only have one more class. Let me see how much work we have for that one class. It's right here. Let me see. No, I'll have to cover it with you tonight. I'm not sure that we can cover all of what I have in the next class. Okay, let me attempt to go through some of this with you. All right, I tell you what, if you make a deal with me, I'll leave these two for the next class. We're going to start on time the next class, and you're going to give me about 15 minutes extra. Do we have a deal there? And I'll have to beg, and I'll have to beg Miss Thomas 15 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Because I would like to be able to really go through how you conduct an appraisal with you. And the last part of this is handling the defensiveness in an appraisal, okay? So we're going to move quickly next class. We're not going to lose the 15, 20 minutes like I did this evening. And you're going to promise me to read so that you can be a little more participative and we can move a little quicker. But we're going to start on time next class because that will be the last of our thought sessions, because the week after that is presentations. So we agree, and you might have to give me like 15 minutes extra next class. Do we agree? I need to get an agreement.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
I only hear two persons answering.
Yes,
Yes, miss.
I agree.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Agree, miss.
Okay. All right. So before we go, you have any questions about anything at all, whether about your group work, about any darn thing, whatever it is? Ask me before we go. No questions? All right. Well, if we have no questions, and I don't see anything in the chat, so if we have no questions, then we're good for tonight, right? Hello?
Yes, miss, we are. Yes, miss, we are.
Okay, half of you went home, you know that? Half of you went home tonight. When I say went home, I mean gone out of class already. Okay?
No, miss, we are still here.
No, half of you gone already.
Oh, half of the class.
For half of the class.
Half of the class gone already. Yes, there's only 26 of you around out of 40 something, right? So anyway, I enjoyed this class. I don't know about you again, but I try to enjoy the classes with you. And as I said, coaching is very important. It's a skill that no matter whether you're a manager or not, it's a good skill for you to develop because you can use it outside of work. You might join Rotary or one of those clubs or even one of your community clubs or at church or whatever. And it's a very, very good skill to have in general. Even with your children, for those of you that have children, these are skills that you can put together and transfer. You make a contract with your child, not doing the pep work and whatever, set up a contract with them, so it's a very good skill. But as I said, go back and look at what your style is, because you won't be successful at coaching unless you know what your style is, what your own weaknesses are, and what your strengths are, because some of your strengths can become weaknesses. Okay, and where you have a weakness, how can you improve that and turn that into a strength and balance your personality? Because some of you may have very, very strong personalities. Okay, so and those are the things that will hold you back within your career development as well. So you need to, take a step back and you can do some more reading, whether after the course is done or if you're still curious now, go and do some more reading so you can understand how to use your personality, you know, how to use your personality in terms of if you're a driver, what should you do to help improve that, how you balance and become aware of it. Okay. All right. So we're done for tonight. All right. You all stay well. Hope to see you all again on Monday.
Thank you,
right?
Miss.
Thank you, Miss.
Presentation
Good night,
start on.
miss. Enjoy your week.
Thank you. Presentation start on. All right.
Bye.
Be safe. Be
Okay,
good.
A lot of information tonight.
Pardon me?
A lot of information tonight. But I like the coaching.
But that's, you like the coaching. Okay, good. Hope you can use it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Who was that speaking a while ago?
This is Anne, Miss.
Okay, Anne. Okay. Okay. All right. Take care. See you soon again.
Thank you again. Night all.
Night.
Good evening. Bye.
Ms. Thomas, can stop your recording. Ms. Thomas, you're there? You have to wait for her to come in. Ms. Thomas? Okay, I have to wait for her. Night, guys. Ms. Thomas? Hello? Olivine? 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 Hi, Ollie. Hi, Olivine.
Yes, Doc.
Olivine?
Yes, Doc.
Okay, I was just waiting for you to